All right, thank you for joining us here on the finale of Mile High Discussions. Happy Cinco de Mayo. My name is Griffin Woolsey, and to commemorate the season finale of Mile High Discussions, I am donning a mustache. Yes, a mustache. But before we get into it, let's just try and wrap up the season and understand that this show is all about student voice, trying to get the student voice out there. They're going to be talking about issues that aren't normally talked about. And let's just get into it with some introductions. Let's just start off right here on the left.
Well, I'm Ryan, and I really like soccer, and I volunteer at the zoo.
I'm Max Pliskin. I like math.
I'm Warren Stokes. I really like ice hockey. It's a cool sport.
I'm Brian Trebus, and I'm interested in engineering.
Right on. So very diverse kind of collection of students we have today for the final episode. Just a reminder, at the end of the episode, we're going to have a 2-cent segment where each one of these individuals is going to offer up their 2 cents on something that they're interested in. Right now, we're going to We're going to jump right into a segment we like to call Out of Left Field. Try and get to know these students a little bit better. And let's just start off with Warren. Warren, what are some of your pet peeves?
Let me see. Some things that I really don't like is I hate it when people, like, sometimes when they're eating, they'll like take their fork and like scratch it upon the plate.
They'll do that on purpose?
Well, not on purpose, but like when they're trying to pick up something like spaghetti or whatever, and it'll scratch across the plate. I hate that.
Do you ever say anything to them?
Not normally, unless like if they do it a certain amount of times, then eventually yes. But if it's just like once.
What is the amount of times that just breaks you?
2 or 3.
2 or 3?
Yeah.
Okay, do not eat spaghetti sloppily around Warren. All right, Ryan, what are some of your pet peeves, man?
One I can really think of is my dad. He had got these kind of invisible dentures off, like not dentures, but more like braces, and he got this nasty habit of cleaning the food out of his mouth with his tongue, and it would make the loudest sound, and it really just got into my head. And he could be across the room, different floor, and if it was really quiet, I could hear him, and it would send me through the roof.
That's disgusting. All right, Max.
There's a teacher assistant who eats food during my class, and he chews it like really loudly. Like he'll eat carrots and like crunchy peanut butter. It's just really
He'll eat crunchy peanut butter. He'll just spoon it out.
Yeah.
Ew.
Gross. Yeah.
That's disgusting. All right, Brian.
I like chalkboards and like the sound of chalk and that sort of stuff.
How often are you around chalkboards?
Not very often.
Okay, so give me something a little bit, something that in your everyday kind of bothers you.
Oh. Oh, when people like sing, but they sing at like a really off pitch all the time.
And they just ruin songs for you, or they're just like,
Yeah.
You need to be quiet, please. All right, that's cool. Let's just keep it rolling. Ryan, what is the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given?
Greatest piece of advice? I haven't been given a lot of advice, but one I would say that really sticks out to me is my dad. It's kind of very cliche-like, but I mean, basically, he told me just don't kind of get ahead of yourself and always stay locked into the present, and don't kind of get worried about what's going to happen in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, a day, a week. Just stay really kind of tethered in the moment.
That's great advice. Stay in the present. Max, what about you? What's the greatest advice you've ever received?
I don't know. I think the most recent piece of advice that has been like useful is to like explain myself more if I'm like discussing things with people, because apparently I don't really do that a lot. But
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, I'll kind of just like make statements without backing them up. So, yeah.
Just learning to get better about
Yeah.
elaborating on things,
Yeah,
especially in arguments. Are you
Yeah.
getting into a lot of arguments?
Yeah.
Are you? What
Yeah.
about?
Like, just like issues in the world, like with my friends, we'll kind of discuss issues going on, and if we disagree, then we'll have arguments about
Okay.
that.
Well,
They're more of like debates, but
okay,
yeah.
that's cool. All right, Warren, greatest piece of advice.
Probably the greatest pieces of advice I've had was from my dad, also like Ryan. Basically, to never give up, in that if you really want something in life in general, that if you work hard at it and set your mind to obtain that, then you will get it.
That's great advice. All right, moving right on. Brian. let's
I'd
just round
say
it
the
out.
best advice I've received is always look on the bright side of life.
Always find the silver lining. That's great. We're just rolling right through out of left field right now, so we're going to keep it going. Warren, give me something you would change about your school.
Let me see. One thing I would change about our school is go back to what we originally had. So for Flex, which is basically our enrichment or like extra classes that help.
Elective.
Yeah, elective classes. But we have it where each day we have something a little bit different instead of just one class. And I kind of think I liked it better with just having that one class, considering that was one of the classes I really liked and enjoyed.
So you want to resort back to what you were doing
Yeah.
previously, and can you elaborate a little bit more on what you liked about that specifically?
So that class that we had, it was robotics. So that's one of the things I also wanted to do when I grow up, be a mechanical engineer and go into robotics and study that kind of field. And now I only have it once a week. So I mean, it's something I wanted to learn more, but now I don't have it as much as I wanted
That's
to.
definitely a bummer. Ryan, what about you? What's something you want to change?
Well, tacking on to kind of what Warren said about the flex block, that's at the end of the day, and it's 45 minutes, and I would say just kind of removing that period in general, because right now we, instead of a 7-hour school day, we have an 8-hour school day, and we don't have an off period, and that flex block at the end is what gives us that 8-hour school day and no off period. So if we're able to kind of remove that or condense that, it would make the day less tiring and kind of more succinct in going to school like 5 days a week and make it just positive.
So you want to do away with that completely. Do you all go to the same school?
Yeah.
All right, Brian, how do you feel about that flex period?
I'd say sometimes it's kind of nice, but at other times it can be just like how Ryan said, sort of a waste of time compared to the other classes.
Good and bad, what's the percentage you could put on it? Good being beneficial time to you
Say
in your
like
studies.
Half the time it's nice. The other
Okay.
half it's just sort of like, oh, we could be working on this instead.
Right. Max, how do you feel about flex period?
I feel like a lot of times it, unless it's a class that I enjoy, like a newspaper, a lot of the time it's kind of just like an extra class at the end of the day that I have to get through. Like it feels like it just makes the day longer, and I feel like it doesn't really serve a purpose.
Right on. All right. Well, some might say that commercials don't serve a purpose, but we do. We're going to kick it to commercial, and right when we come back, we're going to be joining the discussion with these fine gentlemen. All right, we are back from a short commercial break here at the finale of Mile High Discussions, joined by four fine gentlemen here with me today. We're just going to jump right into the discussion. Let's talk about activism. Are you passionate about activism? Is activism something that you support or you're against? Or what's something that really gets you passionate about getting out there, getting your voice heard on things? Ryan?
So I think that activism, I mean, obviously it's an essential part of the way we affect change in our culture, in our community, in our government even. And while it's kind of really important to have that public forum, no matter what that activism is, it's also important to keep in mind that kind of going out and doing a public demonstration might not be the most efficient way to create change. I mean, if you could go out and actively help whatever kind of whatever your target is, that's a lot. You're doing a lot more good than just stepping out and kind of holding up a picket sign. And
Okay, on to that point, what are some more specific ways that we could get our voices heard or get things done besides of just being at the picket lines, Warren?
One, I mean, I'm just throwing out examples that one way you could possibly do that is by, let me see, I mean, other than actually going out there, you could always petition. I mean, that's one way that people do it, and kind of cast out votes of whatever people think is, what majority of people think about whatever subject it is.
Right, so you
That's
think
one way.
social media is a good platform for activism, or do you think it's more of an annoyance? What do you think about that, Max?
I think sometimes it helps like spread awareness of something, but it really depends on like the issue. Like, I mean, if you're trying to get people to, let's say, vote for like a policy to pass, then social media could be good in like convincing people to do that or like making them aware of it. But if it's like a problem like hunger or like poverty, maybe sharing it on social media might not be the best way to help the situation.
to tag on to that, social media, like Max said, it's an effective way to kind of raise awareness, but people have to keep in mind that social media is more than anything, it's about that social status. So what some person might try and raise awareness for something just because of how it'll make them look good. It's not actually an efficient way to accomplish things. It's much more orientated towards the self and how you can make yourself look better than actually contributing to helping other people.
That's a great point. Brian, do you want to jump in on this? How is social media affected? What are some of the other ways that are effective in getting social change across?
I'd say, like Max said, if social media can be effective at like introducing people to a problem or to an argument, but it is most effective if someone actually does something about it, like tries to help with whatever the problem would be.
Right. All right, let's try and solve those problems right now. Brian, what is something in modern day that you would love to change about the world?
It's a hard question.
That's okay. Take your time. Anybody else want to jump in on this one? If you could change anything about the world today, what would it be?
Well, I'd have to say the way we treat our environment or our planet, because people don't realize that the way they litter, the way they kind of consume water at an inefficient rate, it doesn't just affect the environment. Eventually, it's going to affect them. So when you're out there overpopulating or polluting with your broken down car, or you're leaving the tap on while you're brushing your teeth, you're not just hurting animals. You're going to be hurting yourself, and eventually that's going to come back to bite you.
That's a great point, and it might not come back to bite you, but in future generations, it's almost like we're treating Earth like a rental car, where it's like, I'm going to use this for all it's worth while I'm here. Once I'm done, you can deal with it. Does anybody else want to climate change and treating the environment properly is a great point. Does anybody else want to jump in on this topic while we're still here?
I would say also, like, just instead of just trying to prevent further damage, another good thing would be to try to like recover and repair. So like more programs for fixing damage.
Warren, do you have any programs that could be geared towards? If we were to change the environment and try and negate all the prior problems that we've been causing with it, so to speak, what are some things that we could do
I
for
mean,
Earth?
one way is by, attempting to create a water filter because of pollution in water with waste or trash, whatever, that is not only efficient but also cost efficient also. So it's cheaper for not only us but developing countries, so that way all water is more sanitary and healthier, because water is one of the things that there's not a lot of, at least fresh water, and once it's gone, it's gone. there's not much
Right,
to do
and we
about
live on a planet with 75% water, so it's kind of strange that we have cases like in Flint, Michigan, where they don't have clean drinking water, and that's happening in America. It's happening worldwide, so that's something we can keep an eye on. Max, do you have anything you would like to change about the world?
I think, like, there's the, like he said, the climate and trying to somehow prevent climate change, but I have to think about other things to change, because I think one issue currently, like with America, I always express my sort of disappointment with the population of America and the voters, how little people vote and how uninformed they can be on certain issues. So I think finding a way to reach out to people who might not normally follow politics or vote normally, to find a way to make it so that they're able to have access to those resources and become more educated on issues that are important, and then be able to advocate for those issues, because I feel like a lot of that isn't happening right now.
Right, so with voting, you can vote. Anybody who is an American citizen can vote after the age of 18, barring other extraneous circumstances. Do you think that people that are voting are smart? Do you think that it's okay that anyone can vote? Do you think that there should be some sort of process, not to make voting more difficult in a democratic society, but kind of weed out those people that are ill-informed or ignorant to what's really going on?
Well, I think you raise a really interesting question here, because should voters have to be informed? I mean, you don't necessarily have to be educated to still vote for what's in your best interest. You don't have to be aware of the current economic situation on the East Coast if you're living in a rural southern town to know who you want to vote for. You don't have to be aware of global politics when you're solely focused on surviving day to day. I feel that it's more important to vote as to what you would like to see, and that's what comprises us as a kind of democratic federal republic, instead of just kind of a oligarchy or some other form where only the people with more education or more access to this education are able to kind of represent their beliefs in the medium of voting.
That's great. So expanding on that, Brian, do you think our democratic system is working? Warren, anybody else want to jump in on this? Is it working?
I'd say it's not like a perfect system, but it is a pretty effective system so far, with not too much bad stuff happening.
Yeah, I agree also. I mean, it's the best thing that has come up so far, and as of right now, it may not be the best system or the perfect ideal system that everybody wants, but I mean, it's the best as of right now.
That's a good point. So would you all be open to another system? Say that you get to a voting age. I understand that most of you, if not all of you, are under the voting age. If you were to get to a point where you're in your mid-20s, mid-30s, and they almost change the system, they get rid of the electoral college, say, or they just go off of popular vote, how would you all feel that? Would that affect how people vote, do you think?
I personally think it would, because if we go back to the talking about our conversation on social media, as we all know, social media has a big impact on people's ideas and what they think. And I think if we were to go by just popular vote or whatever it is that you were saying, basically, it wouldn't be as effective or the best way to elect a leader or whatever it is. Because, I mean, most people, I mean, if your friend does something, you are typically wanting to do that also, because you want to feel either closer to that friend or just be with the group. And I think that's something that wouldn't be an effective system, and that would, yeah.
I think Warren's absolutely right, and while the Electoral College has been heavily criticized, it's important to keep in mind that, while we are democratic, we are not a democracy. A democracy is where only 51% of the population's interests are represented, because it's those 51% of people who are able to sway everything. So with having electoral college and the large number of representatives we have, we can ensure to the fullest extent that we are representing across all the different demographics and many different people's interests and necessities, really.
That's a great point. Does anybody want to jump in on this?
Well, I kind of feel like he said that in a regular democracy, only 51% of the people, the public opinion gets represented. But I feel like even with our system of government and voting, there still is that there's no way to make like everyone happy. Like, I mean, in some rare cases, you can get like maybe 75% of the population in support of a candidate or like a local official. But I feel like even with our system, there's still going to be like a lot of people who don't like how the vote goes.
That's a good point. Brian, do you think that we would be better suited for another system in that multiple parties are invested in the election? So we could, rather than the two Democratic, Republican, we have, like in England, they have multiple parties. They can actually join up with one another and collect their votes. Do you think that would be a better route to pursue?
That could be effective if they like set everything up properly and had the system worked out to be compatible with that, and that could be a good system. So you're saying like different parties would be able to, so there'd be like more than two parties, and they'd be able to like.
For instance, if Team 6 and Team 7 were getting low votes, they could pool their votes together to trump other parties. Do you think that is a better way to handle democracy? Or basically what I'm trying to ask, are you okay with the two-party system?
The two-party system brings up a lot of complications, but also a lot of successes. I mean, we do see more so now than ever a gridlock between who has the presidency and who has Congress, and our two-party system that creates a lot of issues. However, it does also ensure that we keep a fairly stabilized government, because the way that we sway between what party wins Congress or what party wins the presidency, we're able to ensure that really nothing radical for either side gets too far along or gets past to the point where it really affects people's lives. And you could definitely make an argument that that's a bad thing and that we can't really create change to that, but it ensures that we have a certain guarantee of stabilization so long as we keep a solid two-party system.
That's great. We're going to leave it on that. Head right into commercial. When you come back, we're going to be talking in the final discussion, and these students are going to offer up their 2 cents on the finale.
Welcome to Nerd Necessities Network. You're probably thinking, what is Nerd Necessities Network? That's a good question. Nerd Necessities Network is a premier DPS TV show all about nerdy people, places, and things. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube and all the social networks. That's a wrap!
All right, welcome back. We are just running through today's episode, so we're just going to jump into the final discussion here for one last time. We've been talking about democracy, politics, how things work. Does anybody want to offer up a final synopsis on that before we move into 2 cents?
I would like to build off of what Ryan said, with how the two-party system is probably the best way to do it. Just take an example. Let's just say you have a group of people, and just say 7 people are in this group. All right. Knowing in general, not everybody has the same ideas or thinks of things the exact same. So there's going to be a lot more disagreements with more people. So if you take each person and represent them as a party, by having more than one, it'll be more of a disagreement between them. And you know, it's just something where if you just have the two people and two parties representing two parties, there'd be less disagreements between them, and they'd be more likely to get things done. And yeah.
I think that's a great wrap up. I'm just going to end it there. We're going to jump right into 2 cents. I'm going to begin with Ryan. What are you 2 cents today? 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, with China recently abolishing their one-child policy, I think it's really important to educate people on what overpopulation is and how it will affect us. Because the problem is with, I mean, the Catholic Church and religion spreading around how much the disdain for contraception. We see a huge population boom, and now that China's getting rid of their one-child policy, that can only increase exponentially. So it's very important to keep in mind that the more we overpopulate, the more we're dooming our own race, because we're going to eventually run out of supplies. In 1798, Mullis wrote an essay on this, and almost 200 years later, it still holds incredibly true to, I mean, what we see now.
Thank you for bringing that. Let's just move on, Max.
So I wanted to talk about how on college campuses today, there's a lot of colleges and professors within those campuses that have kind of barred students from expressing opinions that might be contradictory towards the professor or college's own opinion. And an example of this would be a school newspaper published an article that was criticizing leftists, and the college, because of that, threatened to cut the newspaper's funding. And I feel like that goes against the very ideals of this country, where people should be able to express any opinion that they want, say anything they want, as long as you're not like threatening someone, of course, but without say anything that they want, without being without getting in trouble with like the governing body. And I feel like it's just not really okay for colleges to be kind of silencing students.
Yeah, freedom of speech. Warren.
Going back to the whole pollution, is not good for the environment, and eventually it's going to kill us. As Ryan was talking about with overpopulation and how we need to preserve our resources, well, by polluting, it's poisoning those resources, making it less and harder to live. So, I mean, it's one thing that we need to figure out ways to stop. And yeah.
That's great. All right, really quickly, Brian.
I'd say one thing that would be great would be if a lot of people learned more about like different world problems and the opposing arguments, and that would just, if more people were educated about those topics, it could be better for coming out with a good solution.
That's a great point. Always know the other side of the argument before you get into the argument, otherwise having the argument is pointless. All right, we are here with the finale, saying goodbye for this season. We appreciate your viewership, and we hope to see you next semester. It's a strong maybe, I hear. So hopefully we see you next semester. Thank you again to these fine gentlemen for offering up their opinions. See you next time on Mile High Discussions.